show up. There we go. Now we are live.
Yay!
Yay. And my camera's working again. Just poof! Worked this week. Didn't do anything to change it.
Of course it did. Let me know when you share.
Shared, although Facebook did the stupid thing and said it was last week's.
Of course it did.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't see your message on Facebook. I was driving and eating.
That's okay.
Things.
That's
Made a lot of bad choices last night.
That's okay.
I think I went to sleep at about 5:30. Yeah.
I didn't go to bed until 4, and before I went to bed, I finally decided to sit down and watch Guardian of the Galaxy 2. That was not pleasant. Okay. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong, and that's not what I'm saying. But when dealing with, having lost parents and stuff like that, it's a very hard movie to watch.
Gas explosion. What the fuck?
Yeah, there was a gas explosion in Durham.
Oh my god.
16 people were injured last I saw.
1 dead, 17 injured.
I think it was a plant or something, if I'm not mistaken.
Brightleaf. Yeah.
So.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So.
Well, I was just on the phone with Connor. Didn't even know that happened. Wow.
Yeah, I saw that on the news while I was doing laundry at the laundromat. So I don't know if it's made national news or not, but it was on the local.
It came up on Facebook. Some of my friends were tagging themselves safe.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah. All right, so we're ready to start this bad boy?
All right, let me close this, open this, and fuck you, Twitch. Sorry.
What's Twitch doing now?
It did a thing where it kicked back to as if we weren't live. For some reason.
There's always something, isn't there?
Yep. All right.
Okay.
Those aren't our show notes. Hold on. Those are the grills. All right. Now I'm ready.
Okay. Jesus went around to all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and curing every disease and illness. At the sights of the crowd, his heart was moved with pity for them because they were troubled and abandoned like sheep without a shepherd. Matthew 9:30, 35 and 36.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Preamble of the Declaration of Independence. Let's talk about healthcare.
Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast reclaiming faith in the context of political discussion. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. And you can also follow the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and now we're on iTunes and other podcasting, wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a website at heresyandhearsay.com. And, of course, you just can Google Heresy and Hearsay or look us up on any of those platforms and find us there. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, my partner in this, the queen of podcasts, the Wonder Woman of geek, the empress of political knowledge, Ember.
Why, thank you. I am September, and you can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12. That's NINEOF12. And you can hear me on the Geek Grills and Trust Your Cape podcasts. Heresy and Hearsay also is a Patreon site. You can find it at patreon.com/Heresy and Hearsay. Please visit there, help support us. Like $2 a month goes a long way to help us make this humble show.
So we're going to talk about healthcare, affordable healthcare versus universal healthcare, and things of that nature. What I want to touch on first is that during the last 2 years, where they tried so hard, and John McCain, before he passed, I don't, with his it was some sort of brain cancer, obviously understood the importance of healthcare and made sure that Donald Trump and the Republican Party did not take down the ACA, which is the Affordable Care Act. But throughout all of this buildup, ever since the ACA was passed, the Republicans talked about the ability, or not, the term was accessibility to healthcare, that everybody has the accessibility to healthcare. But the thing about accessibility is that there's a barrier to that accessibility, and that's called money. And not everybody can afford healthcare. Healthcare comes out at, for my job, I get a really good healthcare package at my job. But I have to stay at that job to get healthcare. If I leave that job, I can get Cobra for a year, and Cobra is a ridiculous amount of money. I've had friends who've gotten on Cobra, and it's like $600 to $700 a month for healthcare. So
basically, you're paying your own health care in total, where your employer was covering part of it before at a discounted rate because they're buying it for a whole bunch of people.
right.
So it's just like the same as just going to buy your own insurance, but Cobra makes it so you don't have a gap in insurance, which isn't as big a deal now that ACA is a thing, but it used to be a problem where if you had any gap, you couldn't even buy insurance.
Right. And I have pre-existing conditions, and I'm not, and there are bad habits that also I really need to fix, but I have the biggest pre-existing condition I have, or two, is that I'm overweight, and I've been overweight genetically. I am stacked against me to be overweight. My family has been overweight for generations. So, that is always going to be a problem.
Hey,
No
you
matter
know what my biggest pre-existing condition is?
what, being a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Oh, and you've also been a mother. That is
Yeah.
a huge, that's a huge pre-existing condition. But I also suffer from migraines, and the type of migraines I have could possibly increase my chances of aneurysms and strokes earlier than a normal person would be, because of I have the type that messes with the blood vessels, and they explained it all, and it's scientific, and I'm not a scientist, but it's basically, it's so, I
Damn
walk
it,
in.
Jim, I'm a theologian, not a scientist.
Damn it, Jim, I'm a theologian, not a doctor. We should use that more. That's going to be a new catchphrase, I see. Thank you. But
And we are, because of our habits and our left-leaning tendencies, using ACA.
right.
Talking about the Affordable Care Act. Those of you out there who may be on the fence or or only watch TV news, we're talking about Obamacare.
Right.
As far as these laws that have made it better, and I think bent toward solving some of what I would consider moral issues directly.
Right,
With
'cause
pre-existing conditions, being a woman, things that would make it cost more. I mean, you can fight for, like, well, of course, it's a company, they have to survive, so, I mean, they have to charge you more if you're a greater risk, and why would they want to cover you, and that's just capitalism. Well, it's also just fucking wrong.
I agree, and also, and I'm going to lay my cards out on the table.
You're
I
telling
am
some people that they don't deserve to live. So.
Right. I mean, who was that? I can't remember his name, and I should have looked that up. The congressman who went up there and it's like the Republican plan is basically if you get sick, die quickly.
Yeah.
And this was on the Congress floor when he was saying this, and they didn't exactly say no to that, but here, so I want to lay my cards out on the table as far as a few things. I am very socialist leaning. I believe that there are certain things that should be nationally owned. I believe energy of any kind, whether it be fossil fuels or the power grid or whatever, should be controlled by the government. And I don't mean state governments, I mean federal government. I believe that internet and telephone should be controlled by the government as far as standard telephone and standard internet. And then I also believe that healthcare is an inalienable right. That's why I wanted September to read that, because it's how can you pursue happiness? How can you pursue liberty? It says we have the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life is the first one they list, and it's an inalienable right. So why are we having to pay for healthcare?
And I mean, the rest of the statement refers to things that are quality of life issues.
Mm-hmm. Right, correct. So if you're sick, how can you do the other things? How can you pursue liberty? How can you pursue happiness? If you're sick and you can't go to the doctor. I work in customer service for a company, and we provide, and it is not a required thing that we provide, but it is something that a lot of people have. And I deal with a lot of elderly individuals, and some of them will use that to their advantage because that's just how our system works. I'm not talking customer service, just in general, is we're trying to find a way to get it in, or to get something that no one else gets, because it's a capitalist society, and we can go into capitalism, and that will be something we'll discuss much down the line. But on the same token, there are people that call in, and I can hear it in their voice where they only get like $900 a month, and they have to pay rent, and they have to pay utilities, and they have to buy food, and they have to buy medicine. And they're having to make decisions on medicines that will not only extend their life, but give them a better quality of life. When I came out of the hospital the first time, when they said I had diabetes, and I have a form of it, and it's a minor form, but not what they originally thought I had. They were giving me insulin, and they were giving me medication to keep it steady, and insulin twice a day, and I had to get test strips and all that. I went to the pharmacy with my prescription, and the pharmacist, and I knew them. I went to high school with one of the young ladies who was at the pharmacy, and she comes around and she's like, "Look, do you have health care?" I was like, "No." And I was like, "I don't." And it's like, I didn't think it would be that expensive. It's like, well, this medicine, all of this together is going to cost you $1,000 a month. Medicine that they gave me because I could die without it, it's $1,000 a month at retail price. I was able to get help through the county and stuff, but that shouldn't be the case. There are certain things that shouldn't be the case, and we have heard story after story, like that guy who, I, as a Christian, I shouldn't say this, and as a good person, I shouldn't say this, but he had one of the most punchable faces on the planet. Do you know who I'm talking about, don't you? The guy who raised the life-saving medicine for people who had AIDS, so that they didn't get certain other kind of infections, because the medication that they are given messes, and AIDS as a general messes with your ability to fight off illnesses. That you don't die from AIDS, you die from complications of AIDS due to the fact that you can't fight off a simple cold. It turns you and kills you. So, but he raised the price to like $1,000 a pill. and these are like, life-saving. And then, but here's the other thing. About 6 months later, this woman bought the rights to the EpiPen and raised it by 1,000%. And now I know people who are, spring is coming, or spring is here in the South, and bees are out and everything. And I know I have friends of mine who are deathly allergic to bees and stuff, and they are having to use 2-year-old EpiPens. They keep around 2-year-old EpiPens, hoping that if their family member gets stung, that they can use it and it will be effective. That shouldn't be the case. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, I just so completely agree. I don't even know what to add. I mean, we keep EpiPens in the house. We fortunately have insurance, and some stuff went on with that. So even though the prices were raised, they don't end up costing more as long as you have coverage.
Right.
But
and the other thing, and this ties, and this is kind of why we're doing.
But they were always expensive anyway.
Oh yeah, but now they've gone up so much more expensive now. But one of the reasons I wanted to do the mental health first and then this, and going into our next topic next week of abortion and then finally science, is because one of the things that the ACA did is it forced providers of healthcare to also provide mental health coverage.
Yes, the mental health, although there were other, that wasn't actually the ACA.
It
That's
wasn't.
something. No, it was a different law called the Mental Health Parity Act.
Okay.
Where
I thought it was attached to the ACA, so I apologize.
and I've had to invoke it, so I know. I've had to call the insurance commissioner and make my healthcare company give me my money back. Mental Health Parity Act made it so that you can get mental health care on par with, in parity with, primary care, theoretically.
Right.
And that was something the ACA was trying to enforce, but it got reversed. Is like if you have a copay that's $30 for your primary care physician, then your copay to go see a psychologist would be $30. However, yeah, bits of that got reversed. Healthcare companies basically just coded things different anyway and refused to comply. And I had a fight with an insurance company and got money back over it. But I can't anymore because they did manage to shift the law away from it, and you can be charged because it's a specialist.
Right.
Insurance companies have that separate, like, seeing a specialist costs more than seeing, your general practitioner.
Right.
And all mental health care is considered a specialist.
Of course it is.
So it's always more. And I was like, okay. So basically, parity is not parity. I had this argument with the insurance commissioner's office. I'm like, holy shit. They shouldn't really be allowed to call it parity because it's not.
Yeah.
If you need mental health care, it should be the same as, your primary care.
Right.
I love it. None of it costs anything. And one thing the ACA did do is insurance companies cannot charge a copay or anything. They have to cover at least your one visit a year. Once a year, you can go get a physical.
Right.
Get your shit checked out. Women can go to their gynecologist once a year, like no copay. There are a certain amount of things that are just the insurance companies are forced to completely cover.
Right.
And that's where the long-term, common sense lies.
Mm-hmm.
In healthcare is, it's just going to cost so much because everybody will go to the doctor all the time. Well, no, but if you could go once, instead of waiting till you're sick, it'll end up costing less to take care of yourself. And the ACA enforced so that people can go, at least get a physical, go get a mammogram, free of charge. Everyone can do that.
Right. I like to tell this story. Both my parents were terminally ill at the same time. My father had needed a liver transplant because he had contracted hepatitis C when he was a child, and it damaged his liver, and it just needed to be replaced. My mother contracted a form of cancer. It's a bone cancer. I think Elizabeth Edwards had the same kind of cancer. It's not bone marrow, it's bone cancer. So it spreads very quickly, and it can be treated, but it can't be cured. So they were in and out of the hospital for 4.5, 5 years. They were in and out of the hospital for, during that time. Plus my mother was getting chemo at the time. And then my mother stayed in the hospital for like 3 months before she passed. And my father did about 3 to 4 months before he passed. And then we got a bill for all of our doctors from the insurance company, and it was like $1,000. And the reason for that is because my father worked for the federal government, and because he was a part of a union at the same time in the federal government, they basically got the same kind of health care that congressmen and senators and presidents get. My question is, why is it that you have that not everybody can have that kind of coverage?
Well, and there's not a good reason. I mean, a lot of the research has been done, and people are like, I don't want to pay for other people's care. Well, guess what? You already do. The portion of your paycheck that goes to Medicare, Medicaid, and you see it on every pay stub,
Right.
properly applied, that would cover everyone,
Mm-hmm.
not just people on Medicaid and Medicare. But everybody is so screaming and yelling about socialism, scared of it, that hasn't been allowed to happen. And protecting capitalism, which in the instance of healthcare, in my opinion, is completely predatory.
It is.
It's making money off other people's misfortune and illness, medical decisions being made in a boardroom by people looking at the bottom line instead of by your doctor.
Yeah.
It's kind of horrifying.
I remember those town hall meetings, and it's like, it's like death, and Sarah Palin talking about death panels and stuff like, and I was just like, no, who a death panel is those individuals in the boardroom saying you can't have that medicine that may save your life because it costs too much.
Right.
That is a death panel.
Right. Not like a panel of actual healthcare providers deciding the best course of care or end of life care for you, which
Right.
is what was actually being proposed. And I mean, I believe in right to die.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
So there's a dignity there. It should be like, okay, just keep me comfortable, right? Or I'll go now and stop costing everybody everything. And a lot of the scare tactics against socialized medicine they're repetitive. They're the exact same thing. They're scare tactics. My in-laws are Canadian. Well, I mean, my husband's Canadian, so obviously. But I have been able to talk to them directly about not only their healthcare system, which I lived on the border and I worked in Canada for a while. I've used their system, and that's another story I'll continue with. But I didn't know until I met them that Canada switched. Like, in my mind, I always thought they just always had socialized medicine. They always had universal health care. Nope. They switched. So it's not possible, and it's going to destroy the economy, and it's going to ruin and all the jobs and blah, blah. Nope. And because I was able to talk to my in-laws about, I mean, they were scared of it too because they were told all the same shit. The quality of care, death panels, ruining everything. All those tactics were thrown out in the arguments. And then when they passed it, they were like, they were a little nervous and waiting for the other shoe to drop. It never did. They transitioned fine. and their country has as many people as ours and more landmass. I mean, it's possible all those scare tactics are lies. My husband, and it's a good thing they passed it because my husband had a. They're not really sure, but I think it was because my mother-in-law had a skiing accident when she was early in her pregnancy. But at one point, they realized Rob was kind of just walking in a circle a lot. One of his legs was not growing at the same rate as the other.
Right.
And they had to wait till he hit puberty, and he went to had to go to Halifax, I believe, and there was like experimental cutting edge surgery that he underwent, where they took part of his hip bone, they put it in his leg, and they were stretching it, and he spent all his time in the hospital. And this is like commonly now when someone has this issue, this is how they do it. But back then, like 30 years ago or whatever, 25, it was experimental, it was brand new. So he got cutting edge, long term care, many surgeries as an adolescent in Canada, and they never paid a dime. His mom ended up working for basically what is like the health department type, no, nutrition, I don't know. But his dad was a school teacher, and they retired some years ago. They would never have been able to if they were still paying the bills for that life saving surgery. You hear all the stuff about horrible lines and people dying in line. No, that's not true either. Rob lived in Toronto and he could walk into a clinic, he could get his inhaler and get out within a few hours. When his grandfather took ill, I mean, he needed a major surgery. It happened, I think, within a week. I mean, and that involved, I've seen organ donations in the family. That stuff got turned over really quickly. Jack got to make his choice. Like, all right, I'm done. Quit treating me. I'm ready to go. Rob's dad had a bypass again, quickly.
Right, and I've linked in our show notes about wait times. Wait times for immediate emergency stuff is fairly instantaneous, and for non, it says, and this was a study that was done, and for non emergencies, it's about 60 to 90 days, is about 80%. Which for non-emergency treatments is fairly okay because I have to wait 4 months to see a neurologist. So there, and for my migraines, I can't get any medications without seeing a neurologist first. But the neurologist is so booked up and such a specialist, and it's not just one neurologist; it's any neurologist in this area.
Yeah.
It's and then they wanted
Like
to.
median wait time, it says here, for diagnostic services like an MRI or a CAT scan is 2 weeks, with 86.4% waiting fewer than 90
Right.
days. Like 2 weeks. It takes me at least 2 weeks to get an MRI.
Right, and we're paying for it.
Yeah.
So there's a difference. If I'm paying for it, and here's the thing: France has a hybrid system that is everybody gets the standard healthcare, but you can then pay extra to get you know doctor house calls or whatever, and there are specialists for that, and that's something that could be discussed here in America. If people are so concerned about it, then you can get that hybrid care if nothing else. But a lot of countries with socialized medicine, they are perfectly fine. Canada has the longest wait time. Okay, so but they're still working on implementing. They're still, it's what, two, maybe one generation old. It's about what, 20-30 years old
Yeah.
or so. So they're still working out some of the kinks, whereas these other countries have had it for 50-60 years or longer. And it goes into the other parts of this, is like part of healthcare in general in Germany and a lot of the European countries. And I know people are like, well, European countries are smaller. We can't do that on a broader basis. Like, yes, we can. We have more money, than they do. We have more resources than they do. It's just that we refuse to tax people to get that money. But in Germany and a lot of the other European countries, they give mothers paid maternity leave for at least the first year, if not longer, depending on the country. But paid maternity leave so that a mother can spend time and nurture their child.
And the beautiful thing about the Canadians' family medical leave situation is they can split it.
Hmm.
Not only is their job protected, they for that year they can split it. Like the dad and mom could just each take 6 months and all be there with the child. And they've been
And
trying
that,
to expand it to 2 years.
yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And here's the thing: people talk about development, and we're talking about health, and there's an overall health point. When a my mother had the opportunity to decide, because my father was in the military at the time, and we weren't well off, but the military makes sure that they, if you're in the military, then you're not going to starve. That may be it, but but my father, may not be the greatest comfort in life, um, but my mother had the ability to stay home while I was growing up, and the same thing for my brother until we both went on and we're 5 years apart. So she's basically took 10 years out of her life in any career that she may have wanted, which meant she basically didn't have a career. She just worked jobs, which is a difference. And she spent 10 years, nurturing two boys who turned out fairly well. Um,
I feel like it's connected to mental health. I've said this before when I was trying to fight for the Family Medical Leave Act. Holy cow, back in '07. I remember taking it up with Kucinich at one point and making him add it to his platform. Because ours is so bad that there's a reason. I feel like Canada has. They have more, probably not anymore, but at the time they had more guns per capita than we do,
mhm.
and way fewer shootings. You think maybe the first couple years of your life, or even just the first year, having that kind of nurturing, having that, not having to, like, within a week or two, your mom has to go back to work, and then you're passed around with strangers, and who knows, like, what could happen, and just the whole society having that view of, well, yeah, it's important to raise your kid. Let's give you let's give you a year, let's give you 6 months to take a breath and do what's the most important thing in the world, growing a human being.
Mhm.
And I think it affects the mental health and the well-being of the entire country, and it has a cascade effect.
I do too, and I think it's important. I'm not a father. I'm not a parent. I'm not a woman. So, but I have a lot of female friends, and that are mothers, and they talk about that bonding between, when you have that chance to bond with your child and spend time with that child. It is so important to them as well, to be forced to go back to work in 2 to 3 weeks, or at most six, at most that they give is 6 weeks paid maternity, and part of that, and most of that is your vacation time.
Hmm.
They automatically take your vacation time out first before anything else. um so you get 4 weeks or something, like 4 weeks of actual maternity leave, so 6 weeks total, to bond with your child. That's not a lot of time. And then you're putting your child back in daycare, and mothers are missing first words, first crawl, first turnover, first walk, all that kind of stuff. What does that do to the parent as far as their mental health?
Oh yeah.
You know, what does that do to them? Um, as far as the shootings, I think that's different. It's a whole nother kettle of fish that we can get into later. But I think that's more, it's more of our society, less about healthcare or childcare, and that's just more of our society. It's a whole other big fish. But I
I,
could,
I, I don't think you can separate mental health care from health care. I don't think you can separate. I mean, you talk about being the society that, a society that views caring for children and caring for each other as a right rather than a privilege, I can see those as very much connected with a tendency toward violence or not, given the
Right.
same opportunities.
And I do see your point in that as well. And I know there are people out there that'll say, well, there'll be some people that abuse the system. There'll be women that'll get pregnant every year just so they don't have to work and get paid.
Oh,
Okay.
they already say that now.
Well, and here's my argument to that point. Okay, so there are people that abuse every system.
Yeah.
So there are people that abuse, and you just can't help it. There are going to be people that will try to find loopholes and try to get out of it, or try to get the most they can out of a certain situation. That's perfectly fine, but that's not the majority of people. That is at best, it's like 0.001% of the total population that does that kind of stuff.
Well, you're
And
talking about
it's
the Christian morality of it. It's certainly not a reason to deny taking care of people.
no. And so, you know, and the Bible talks about taking care and healing the poor, the widow, the child, and stuff like that. And then I put down at the bottom, there was a couple of articles that came out about what does the Bible say about Obamacare, which already tells you what side they're on, or and
Right.
whatever. Or what does the Bible say about healthcare? And basically it's like the government shouldn't be involved with healthcare. It should be the churches and stuff like that. It's like, great. That's wonderful. The churches should be involved with it if that's the way you're going to go. So why are we building $1 million churches and having salaries for for pastors, where they live in mansions, instead of taking that money and using it for healthcare in your facilities?
Right?
For the right
Like,
for
how
the
many clinics could you build with what you spent on a mansion? How many
right
doctors could you pay? How many kids could you scholarship through getting medical training?
Correct. And you can set up the scholarships to where it's like they have to spend a certain amount of time being in poor or free clinics and stuff like that, and that will pay off part of their tuition or whatever. I have no problems with that either. I think that's a good idea overall. You spend 2 years at a free clinic and then you can set up your own practice or go to a hospital or something like that. Because I think you need that experience anyways. But it's also one of those situations where you're saying that the church and stuff is needing to do this, um needing to do all of this stuff to help people. I'll give you an example. When Houston was having that flooding down, when they were having that hurricane, and there's this huge church, Joel whatever his name is, has this huge mega church that could have been turned into a shelter. He refused to do that. He absolutely refused to do that. Um,
Oh, and he lied too. He's like, "Oh no, it's flooded," and like people went there and like took pictures.
yeah, no, took video of it like
Yeah,
being maybe an
we're right
inch.
here.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's unconscionable. That's so
It,
gross.
well, I find, to be honest, I find mega churches gross to begin with.
Oh yeah, me too.
I find that, and here's the thing: those people, the mega churches and stuff like that, the Haggees, the Joel, whatever his last name is, and those kind of individuals, they're the Pharisees of today. They're the Pharisees that Jesus preached against today, because they're the ones that hoard the wealth, cuddle up with the government, even if the government is completely against what they're saying or completely against what the Bible says. And like I said, if the church is going to take up that burden, they should take up that burden. David Hogg posted on his Twitter earlier this week. He says, and I retweeted it, it is unconscionable that someone should have to have a GoFundMe to pay for healthcare. And I agree. And how many GoFundMes, have you seen on Facebook passed around from friends of yours of people they know or whatever to pay for an operation of some kind,
Yeah,
that they need? And these are life-saving operations, but they don't have health care for one reason or another, and they're having to pay. They're having to crowdsource this. How dare us as a nation with billionaires who can buy 15 mansions and politicians who can buy 7 or 8 homes? How dare they
Yeah.
have to allow that to happen?
This article that I, will have in our notes that you posted in ours about Christianity.com is alarming to me as well.
Yeah.
Like they're using the Bible as one of those examples of, to me, twisting things. Like they take where gleanings are left in Leviticus and as proof that the needy people need to, but you need to be able to go get it, right? You need to be able to help yourself, and that a handout reduces your dignity. So you should have to go out and earn your health care and pay for it because it's undignified to just receive help. That's really twisted to me. Like, what if you're not able-bodied? It's kind of, and they're using this point in a healthcare scenario, so.
and here's the other point is like, no, that's not what that means, and this article is written by a doctor, a MD.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, you may be a doctor, but I'm the theologian and you're wrong. So, because Jesus talked about helping the poor no matter what, about going out and helping the poor, going out and doing what was right for people and everything else. And so to have someone come up who says they're a Christian, who says that they've believed that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior and they've taken him into their heart, they are a very bad Christian. They're not very good at it.
And this is a really, really common thing, right? They go back to Leviticus because it's a bunch of laws and rules in the Old Testament. And they use that to use the Bible to prove some kind of point. And that ignores the fact that there was a new covenant, right? The New Testament. That Jesus came and said, you know what? We can do better than this.
Right.
And broke it down to, harm none. Do better. Do unto others. And throw out all that other long list of rules and trash. Like, we could just do better than this. Simplify. Keep it simple, stupid. That's like Jesus' theme. But all these, Bible thumpers keep doing this to manipulate people.
Right. There was one where this guy had a tattoo on him about gay marriage or whatever, about a man laying with another man is wrong or whatever. It's a tattoo, and it's Leviticus. Leviticus also says that you should not get tattoos. So I think he's kind of, and that's the thing is if you want to follow the law, okay, you can follow the law, but understand that you need to follow all of it, and you can't have your pulled pork sandwiches anymore. You can't have your shrimp cocktails anymore.
Right?
You can't.
You can't wear clothing made out of more than one type of material.
Right. Don't if you're going to follow the law, and that's all on you. I don't know how you're getting married with that law.
No, it's all about imposing it on other people.
Yeah,
when it's convenient.
I know, and that's what makes me so angry about. And this is why I wanted to start this podcast initially, is because I'm tired of, and that's why we keep saying it's reclaiming faith through a political discussion, because politics and it's not just in recent times, don't get me wrong, it's been a constant where people will take the Bible and use it in ways that it's not meant to be used. They're using it, their interpretation, quote unquote, is for hate, is for control is for pushing everybody down. And my other thing about healthcare and the Bible and everything is how so many of the Republican voting bloc claims to say they're Christians. And I keep saying claim, and then I correct myself because I keep hearing Lewis in my head saying, if they say they're Christian, they're just bad at it. So forgive me for that. They say they're Christians, and yet they vote in ways that are hurtful and mean-spirited and just sometimes downright evil versus what the Bible preaches. And we'll probably get into this a little bit more in the science section in 2 weeks. But, how can you think it's okay to shove water into the earth to get a little more natural gas out of the crust of the earth, or that it's okay for us to chop down all the trees because there might be a coal mine there, and say you're a Christian because we are stewards of this world? Yes, we have control over it, but that doesn't mean that we burn it down. God gave us this planet, and you look at it and you go, God's looking at it as like, that's not what I meant, people. That is not what I meant. I didn't mean to burn it down. Where are you going to go? I gave you this one. So that, so people talking, so healthcare, and the climate does involve the healthcare too, because if we don't do something about our climate and control it, we're all going to, there's going to be so much more disease and hunger and everything else. So that does kind of feed into it a little bit. But ultimately with healthcare and the Bible says take care of each other, love each other. One of the ways to love someone is to take care of them when they're sick. How can you take care of someone who is sick if you can't afford the medicine they need? I don't. It hurts me to think that Christians think this and feel this. That they feel that, no, I've got mine, screw you, Jack, is how Christ would want us to be. Because that's what it comes off on. When you read these articles and listen to, when you listen to Paul Ryan talk about healthcare, back when he was in politics and stuff like that, and he talked about healthcare and accessibility to healthcare and all this stuff, and he's a devout Catholic, and the Catholic nuns called him out on his shit. It's like, no, how dare you? And that's the other thing is, a lot of Republicans believe in Ayn Rand's bullshit, and how can Ayn Rand believe that religion was a narcotic for the stupid?
Yeah.
So how can you be a Christian and still believe in her stuff too? And by the way, in case you've forgotten, Ayn Rand, the last few years of her life, lived on the government subsidies and government dole because she didn't make enough money on her shitty books.
Yeah.
So and we paid for her health, and the government paid for her health care her last few years of her life. So yeah, how can you follow her teachings when she was a hypocritical individual in her own right? Because as soon as she needed a handout, she took it gladly.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the things that just, but you can't. And I think that's why I get so frustrated, is because as much as you talk about this stuff and as much as you try to say, grab somebody by the lapels basically and shake them violently for a second and then say, listen, everything you're listening to is completely and totally wrong. It's like, no, it's not. My opinion is my truth. It's like, truth isn't facts, and facts are facts. They don't get a second opinion. That's why, and our news cycle does the same thing. Is because someone says climate change is, and John Oliver, you should watch him. He's amazing. John Oliver did this thing many years ago where he was going to have a discussion about climate change, and he had one climate denier versus one climate, and it's like, no, wait, hold on, this is wrong. So this is how it should be fair and balanced. You got one climate denier, and then they had 99 scientists walk out and all yell at him, because that's the facts. The facts are that 92, 93% of the scientists believe that climate change is real. So in a room of so instead we have two talking heads, neither one of them scientists, by the way, unless occasionally you get Bill Nye on, and he's not a scientist, he's an engineer, but still. And you get them on the shows and basically going, talking at each other. But the thing is, that's not the truth. Not every side has two. Not every story or not everything has two stories. There is the facts, and then there's someone who thinks they have an opinion.
Right.
The facts, the sky is blue. That's a fact. You don't need to have someone come on and say, nope, the sky is pink.
Well, I mean, sometimes it is pink at sunset. But
really?
It is. You used a poor example of a fact, sweetie. That's all.
Water is wet. You
There
don't
you
need
go.
somebody. Okay, water is wet. You don't need somebody to say, no, it's actually like sand. Yeah. Okay, is that better? All right. My point is, is that there are facts. Fact one is that healthcare is a human right. And I don't want to hear someone's opinion that they think that because they would have to pay a little extra in taxes that it's not a human right, should get airtime. It's, that's the way it is. Human right. It says that in the preamble of the Declaration of Independence. Life. How do you pursue life if you are dying from an illness and can't get medical attention? And I know the preamble says men, and I know we're looking at the pretext.
I think it's like royal. I see it. Well, I mean, at the time it definitely didn't, but
right now
I don't think we have to bother with actually changing it.
Yeah, no. There are certain things as like when there was a movement going around for a while of changing the pronouns in the Bible, and I'm like, okay, maybe, but it's not really going. It's me when they talk about I am. When God uses the male pronoun or for himself, it is a royal pronoun, but you can still see God as a woman. There are, that is perfectly fine. If that's how you see God, great, and go for it. When they talk about God the Father, you have to understand that we're also looking through the lens of patriarchal society. You can still see God as whoever you want to see them, but you don't need to go and change the text. You read it for that. You read it, and you say when you read God the Father and you see God the Mother, that's perfectly fine. But we don't need to change the text, because the text is, even when I say historical, I mean that the translations and everything is built into it historically. That these are from historical documents. We shouldn't change the text as historical documents. We can change our perceptions of those historical documents. There's a difference. So, I know that's a bit of a tangent. Sorry. And the thing is that not only, and this is going to be a nice segue into our other topic next week, which is going to be fun. I have no right to tell a woman what to do with her body. I am not a doctor. I am not, and as a theologian, I have no right either. Okay. Women's health care, I have no idea about. Women have a lot more health issues than men when it comes to their, as I lovingly refer them, womanly bits. because I don't, because, you know, it's a whole different kettle of fish
Yeah, and as we referenced before, like health insurance companies used to charge women more
Mhm.
just because basically we have, more parts.
Right. You have more parts, and they work different, and then, you know, anything else that, you know, that the human body deals with, it's, how do I put this? It's an opening that is, just as a start point, it's an opening that is, if not taken care of very carefully and everything, is ripe to get infections to begin with. That alone, if you don't eat something, if you eat something wrong or whatever, you can get a urinary tract infection a lot easier than men can get a urinary tract infection. There are so many different things that a woman have to go through, and to have a bunch of men tell you how that you can't go and get health care, or that, you know, Planned Parenthood, which will be part of the topic, but Planned Parenthood, 90% of their stuff has nothing to do with abortion and has everything to do with women's health care.
Well, I mean, and again, like, how short sighted is that? Because without women taking care of women's health, guess what? You all just die out.
As more than one of my female friends have said, if men were left to birth babies, the human race would have died out eons ago. And it's like, yeah, I can understand that, you know. So.
And there's a lot of little things that people don't realize where women's bodies work differently because of having to do that. Like heart rate differences, body temperature differences.
And the stress on the human body and everything else by giving birth and everything, you know. And they talk about, you know, well, you can do a C-section. My understanding from the women that that have told me about C-section is they basically gut a woman to get to in, you know, less gross terms, but they basically gut a woman. They had to move certain body parts to get the baby out, and then they had to put the body parts back in the correct order. Am I wrong in this as a man?
I've never had one.
So. You know, okay. So
I've passed all mine out the hard way.
So, you know,
or a different hard way.
Yeah, yeah.
But the recovery time, and that's another, like, where the family medical leave issues. I mean, you get a C-section. I mean, you cut through your abdominal wall, and
right.
You got to go back to work.
6 months
anyway?
later. 6 weeks later. Yeah.
It's 6 weeks. Nobody gives 6 weeks.
I don't know. I'm not a woman, so, you know, so I don't know these things. But yeah, so yeah, okay. So you get to go back in 3 to 4 weeks. That is absolutely stupid.
Yeah, if they don't just find a, you know, reason to fire you instead. I was fired from a job when I was pregnant with Connor, like the day after I submitted my application for the maternity leave.
You were kidding. What did they? What was their excuse?
A day I had been late a week prior. After going to a mandatory meeting that morning, and then I had a shift a few hours later. The bus was late. I had morning sickness, and then I got to work, but just a little late. And then, yeah, like a week later, they fired me, and they said it was for that. Now, had I had more means and realized legally they couldn't do that, because the whole mandatory meeting thing, and there's another thing, that frickin' meeting I went to.
Right.
No one else in my department went to that meeting. None of them got fired for not going to the mandatory meeting that was somewhere else. It wasn't even in the workplace. But scheduling a shift with less than 6 hours in between was illegal. So I didn't know any of that until years later. I raised Connor. We were in welfare the first couple of years.
Yeah, and that is just bullshit, you know. So I don't understand how anyone could feel that's a good thing to do or that's the right thing to do. Especially when what last week I think it was that a congressman went up on the floor and said basically the cure to our to climate change is for us to have more babies.
Hmm.
Is like, and the Republican Party loves motherhood and believes in motherhood and all of that kind of stuff. Yet, as soon as that baby or venerates pregnancy, but as soon as that baby is born, then they don't care.
Hmm.
You're on your own.
And here's the problem with the way we handle family medical leave and maternity leave in particular. The laws we do have require they give you leave, like 12 weeks,
Right?
unpaid.
How can anybody live unpaid?
Like, they have to theoretically give you your job back 12 weeks later, but they don't have to pay you.
So you don't get paid for 12 weeks. I'm sure that the power company, the if you're renting, or your mortgage company, and the grocery store are okay with you not paying them for 12 weeks as well. Yeah, no, I didn't realize it was unpaid. That is just ridiculous. How can, as a society, we even do that? It boggles the mind. And and like I said, they want you to be, um, they want you to be a mother. They don't want you to have an abortion. All this kind of stuff. But as soon as you have that child, I think it was George Carlin that said, that basically, on one of these comedy things, he was like, you have to have your baby after you have a baby, and as soon as you have the baby, you're out of fucking luck until that child's 18, and then, hey, you want to join the military?
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically how. Then they'll care about the child again, but it's not a child. It's cannon fodder for the meat grinder of our constant wars, and that's another thing entirely too.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't claim, you can't claim to, and we're getting to the other subject. But
Yeah.
you can't claim to care about mothers, and you can't claim to care about healthcare and be a Christian individual, but then tell them, fuck you, I've got mine. You just have to, like that article that we were talking about, is like basically go and get your own. We'll leave scraps out for you so you can try to find them. And is like, one of the things that they talked about with the ACA is that the mandate, which is a big thing. I worked insurance before the current job I have now. I work for auto insurance. So I can give you some basic statistics of how this works. The reason why auto insurance works the way it does and you're priced a certain way is actuarial tables, but more importantly, you are in a group. So each state that an insurance company that covers a specific state, each state that they're in, you're all lumped into a group. So if you've got really good driving record or whatever, and you're paying like $300 every 6 months for really incredible insurance, they take into consideration that A, you're not going to get in an accident, and B, if you do, it's not going to be your fault, so that they can pay out those large sums of money. The 100,000, 300,000, if you can, get it. That's that's another situation. But you have to be in a pool together. You have to have the high risk with the low risk to keep the cost down for everybody. And that's why they fought so hard for that mandate, is because if you don't have that mandate, then you lose, that ability. And Trump was like, I think they got rid of it. Finally, they got rid of the mandate somehow. And
There's an executive order.
it was an executive order about,
It's
it is.
It's trying to sabotage the system and create the death spiral.
Right. so that it kills it. And I know there are people that are on the left, the very left like me, who would have preferred to have a single payer option in there. And I understand it wasn't there, and I was upset about it, but I also got it as a whole, because this is not the end step.
Well, and I see it, yeah. I saw it as a step toward. It was what could be accomplished in that time. It was, once people see it working, you would think they would, you know, oh, okay. Well, maybe single payer wouldn't be so bad. Look, the world didn't end. But instead, they just keep trying to repeal it. And a lot of the people that believe in that, it has nothing to do with them, really. They're not among the millions that now have coverage that couldn't before. There are people that are freaking out because they might be paying a little more than they used to.
Right. And here's the thing about that.
Fair. I don't want to take care of anybody else.
Okay.
Sorry, bad Christians.
Yeah, very bad Christians, and it's true. It's but it's one of those situations that the Republican Party did for their brand, which is fuck you, Jack. That's how I that's their brand. Their brand isn't like the big grand party or whatever. It's the fuck you, Jack party. It's like, if you don't have yours, fuck you. And for some reason, and especially, and I don't get it in the South, especially, guys, I don't understand. And, they talk about states' rights and stuff like that, but they don't really believe in state right. What they believe in is, getting, as long as you can get yours, don't worry about anybody else. And the thing is that you're never going to get yours. I know they hype up this dream that you're going to get yours, that you're going to move up in society. But there has been studies after studies showing that the place that you're born in America versus the rest of the world, the place that you're born in as far as a socioeconomical level, you don't move. The percentage of movement is minute versus the people that are stuck in that same one year after year, generation after generation for the past several generations. You don't move. And now it's actually getting worse because back in the 80s, when another actor was president, and we should have learned from that example. Jesus Christ, this country is just full of people making the same stupid mistakes repeatedly, but basically made it to where it was more expensive to go to college. Back in the day, it wasn't, back in the mid 80s to the 50s, it wasn't that college was much more affordable for a lot of people. And they basically did away with that. And now, and my generation, mine and September's generation, because we're Xers, we basically started talking about it then, but we were a small minority generation versus the millennials. And I have no problems with the millennials, when they talk about this kind of stuff, is like, well, you're not settled with $60,000 worth of debt as soon as you walk out of college, and you're not going to get it. They tell you to get a degree where you can make money, but everybody else has been told the exact same thing. And now there's, 50 of us in the graduating class that are all got BAs in business. What are we going to do with that? No one's going to hire us. If we're hired, it is not going to be the job that we spent $50,000 to get. So, yeah. And also back in that time frame, you would have people who would take degrees so that they could help society, that they could still make a decent living at or whatever. But now our society, because of that huge debt that suddenly appears on you, you've got people who are becoming lawyers, and they're not becoming lawyers because to help people. They're becoming lawyers to become corporate lawyers. There's story after story of people who's like, I would love to work for a nonprofit as a lawyer, or and giving my expertise to help them, but I can't afford it. I got $100,000 worth of debt from college and law school,
right?
And so that And then they're also trying to get health care on top of that because they have to pay for the health care versus that. One of the things they talked about is about the ACA and healthcare is that you can move from job to job without worrying about your healthcare. If you can afford the healthcare, it will be okay.
Well, I know it's
You know,
certainly been a blessing to my college age son that he
mm,
can stay on my insurance until he's like 26.
right. And that is very important. But and that's something that
Although if we
and
had
it,
universal, if we had single payer, we wouldn't have to worry about it. But
no, it's true. You know, but you look at other countries like Finland, like Norway, and I use the Scandinavian countries a lot. And I know they're a much sparser population total, but if you look at them, they pay about 47% in taxes. That's their tax rate, 47% total. Free college, free healthcare, maternity leave, subsidies to help kids in schools, great school systems, and a great social safety net.
yep,
That's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness right there.
right.
You know, and so there was a thing on 60 Minutes several years ago about this woman who's very famous, made a lot of money. She was an artist. I think she might have been a writer or something like that. But she didn't have a lot of money per se, because she gave 47% of it, in taxes. So she lived in a really nice apartment in a really big city in a swanky part of town. She did have money, but she also said, "Yeah, that's just the way life is here. We take care of each other."
Mm-hmm.
And Norway is not it's not seen as a Christian nation. Like what America, like whenever a Republican is running for president, that we're a Christian nation. But they take care of their own. We should be able to do that here. And one of the first steps we should be able to do is provide basic, simple health care for everybody. There are other things we could provide too, but that is the big one. We should be able to provide health care to our society because our society deserves it. There's this thing that happens, and I try to give money to it when I can. It's free dental clinics that go around the country, and people wait in line for 2 days to get to this. Mm-hmm. Because dental care is not. I don't know if it's part of the ACA. I don't think it is, but they have to go and pay for dental care. Why is dental care separate from medical care? If that's the case, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure, but if it is, why is that the case? And B, why are we in a society where people have to wait 2 days out in the cold and rain,
Right,
to see a dentist?
Yeah, medical insurance, as far as dental, generally only covers like emergency procedures.
Right.
Not, not even basic dental health.
Right.
Like we've got separate dental insurance.
I have dental insurance as well, but my dental insurance is such crap, and it's normally is, that I'm still paying so much out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
That it becomes, some of the things I need to have done, I can't get done because I can't afford it. I own a
And
house.
it's another thing because we understand now that proper dental health, not maintaining your teeth can cause, severe complications like heart attacks, right? It affects your cardio health. So I think it should be included in plans. But no, that's another racket going on. We've got decent coverage, but I still can't afford to get. I have some teeth missing. I would love to get dentures or an implant, but it's not affordable.
Right.
The small percentage that, because it's really small percentage. Like I can go get my cleaning every 6 months for free, and my X-rays, but when we need a filling or something, it's only 80-20, which is still pretty good. But stuff like dentures and replacements are astronomical and
Right.
covered at a very, very small percentage.
And I've seen dental care where the cleaning and stuff is nominal expense, but if you want to get a filling, it's really expensive, and people opt to just have the tooth pulled.
Mm-hmm.
Because they
And
can't
extraction
afford it.
is, affordable, and then you
Uh,
never have to deal with it again.
yeah, versus having to get a crown or a filling or whatever. So yeah, and it's just that's I again, I don't under how are we supposed to be able to eat food if we have no teeth? I mean, I guess we could gum it to death, but still, it's just not as much. There are certain foods that will hurt. Like, I am from the South, and so I grew up on fried chicken. I love fried chicken, and you can't have fried chicken. Pulled pork may be a problem. Pork rinds is a problem. So, and I love pork rinds. I do. I am glad I am not Jewish, because I do love pork products. So there's a plus to that. But maybe the Jews had it right as far as the food, because it didn't help my health any. But anyway, but that's the other thing is, like, okay, so you can go and get preventative health, which is you can get your checkup and stuff like that. One of the preventive health things should be a nutritionist. To be able to see a nutritionist, and be like, okay, you're really eating crap, and we need to talk about that because if we're doing preventative health, that should be one of the things.
I mean, how about a gym membership? Like, wouldn't it be nice? I pay for, our health insurance.
Right.
Why don't they give Planet Fitness $10 a month?
I know it's $10. I think they can afford $10. Nope. They got to get a new gold lame, whatever.
And that's another thing that Trump has undone about the ACA that I found was super, super important.
Was the 80%?
The 80/20. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those of you out there that don't know, the Affordable Care Act made it so that insurance companies were by law required to spend 80% of what they charge in premiums on actual care, rather than just skimming all the extra off the top and being as for-profit as they can. I mean, 20% is still a really good profit, especially it is way more moral way to deal with stuff. And yeah, they're trying to undo that. I don't know what their excuse is. Well, no, because capitalism is their religion. They sought to undo that. And it made me really sad because I'll tell you, the first year the ACA was in, I got a refund check from my insurance company because they got caught. Whoops. We're not actually spending all that money on care. And I mean, our premiums have gone up since, but they went down first. They were going down. And coverage was getting better, but as it's been picked at, dismantled bit by bit, now rates are going up and they're blaming it on. See? It's failing. See? Your rates are going up like we said they would. No. Their sabotage is causing that.
Yep.
They're fooling you.
Yeah. But people aren't tuned into that. They listen to Fox News, and Fox News isn't going to tell them the truth.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. So yeah,
Is it about cover it?
I think so. Do you, the only other thing that I want to touch on just for a second is that we talked about the mental health and we talked about that, and I honestly think that should be there should be preventative health for that as well. Is that I feel that as a nation we have an incentive and a duty to our fellow human beings to take care of each other, because especially if, and I don't believe this, but if you are going to claim this as a Christian nation, then the Bible says that you have to take care of everybody. Because if you don't take care of everybody, then you're not being a Christian. You're not doing your Christian due diligence. that your brother's weight is not that heavy. And that's all I have to say about that. Do you have any final thoughts?
Nope.
All right. So, with that being said, next week we'll be coming on Tuesday morning about 11:30. As far as the live stream, we'll be discussing abortion. So that will be a fun discussion. Hope those that are willing to come on will see it then. And then we'll be discussing the following week after that. But so I want to thank you for joining us here at Heresy and Hearsay. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at Seth Roth II. You can also follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. We have a website as well. Just Google us. Don't forget our Patreon page, where $2 a month will keep us going.
And I'm September, also known as 9 of 12. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter, and hear me on the Geek Grills and Trust Your Cape podcasts. Thank you for listening today, and bless your hearts.